Today we're going to talk about don't know mind and kind of loosening up around concepts. So concepts, firstly, concepts are great. They're unbelievably useful. Thoughts are great. Um, Loosely held opinions are also just fine. Emotions are good. We are not trying to get rid of any of these. Moreover, to get rid of, to try to get rid of any of these is dissociation, repression, and denial. We don't want that. So what we're trying to do is kind of, it's kind of the middle path. So what we're trying to do is just hold our views lightly and kind of hold everything in proper contextualization. If views and thoughts, concepts are held lightly, then they can be used in a nimble way and then dropped. However, if we identify with our views, that's where the trouble starts. So what we're trying to let go of is fixed view, belief, in a sense. These fixed views hem us in. But why do they hem us in? Why is this a pattern for us? All these fixed views and reactive habit patterns are what have helped us make it through, I think, largely childhood. They helped distract ourselves from suffering that we could not have metabolized at the time. But the kind of protective pattern stays in place longer than it's useful. And the reason why it stays in place is because actually these protective patterns get developed as the brain is in early development. Like, interestingly, a human's brain coming out of, after birth is massively underdeveloped relative to like a deer's brain or a rat's brain. So in a sense, the external world is much more deeply conditioning to a human than it is for other mammals, right? So my point is that these adaptive mechanisms are in there very deeply in the actual architecture of the mind. And so it takes a while to unwind them. And this is, in a sense, much of what the Buddha Dharma is about. And then I'll read a quote from Ken MacLeod. The practice of Buddhism is about exposing and dismantling belief. Anyway, okay. Okay, so a little bit more as to what is don't know mind. So don't know mind is a suspension of the need to know. The skill of don't know mind is to be at ease and equanimous with the usually quite disturbing condition of confusion. It is also the loosening up in the face of delusionally firmly held beliefs. That loosening up of belief leads into more confusion. And so, and this is, I think, an interesting thing to emphasize. So we kind of hold on to and create new ossified beliefs to kind of hold and protect us. And then when those start to break open, what happens is confusion. So by doing this practice, we're both turning what was security and knowing, albeit like a kind of false security and a false knowing, we're transmuting it into confusion. So we're going to be creating more confusion for ourselves. But then we're going to sit with the confusion, be equanimous with the confusion, and that transmutes the confusion into something else. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about like how I want to highlight the word suspend. So the need in this practice of don't know mind, the need to know is suspended. this description feels right to me. So with the need to know, there is this darting and grasping. With don't know mind, there's a feeling of suspension, of just hanging out in open space, and the reactive habit pattern of needing to know simply doesn't form, leaving the experience a bit more unmanifest and more suspended. So don't know mind is the mind that is at home with confusion. And to be clear, this is a centrally important life skill. The reality is that we don't know much. Yeah, and I think another way of understanding this is to think about this is just actually knowing that what you experience is sensory experience. That's it. It's just sensory events. Whereas this quality of knowing is like to kind of really lose perspective on, okay, there's just an arising and a passing, or even like the implication of don't know mind is in the insight that thoughts are just a sensory event, right? Like in Buddhism, they talk about the mind sense as the sixth sense. So just the mind sense being simply a sensory event already points at don't know mind. It's just like a sensation. That's all it is. Okay, so why would we want to be interested in all of this? Like, of what benefit? I think it's already somewhat clear, but let's drill into this a bit further. So we learn to be equanimous with things as they are, and and we learn to not to need to be on one side or the other of an issue. We develop a more open mind that lets go of harsh judgments. The ordinary mind needs to avoid confused and muddled states, but that's impossible, right? And this don't know mind is like it's a kind of allowing ourselves to collapse into that not knowing, not needing to know. This is a more sane way of relating to the world and to our thoughts. Just allow and understand that we don't know how things should be or how they will turn out. The normal mode of being is one in which we imagine that we are separate actors apart from the rest of the world, which judges, condemns, condones, and predicts. Don't know mind is where we allow this conceptual fantasy world to collapse and become simple. Simply a part of suchness, of the way that things are. So we see how the qualities of openness, how the quality of openness is important. Don't know mind is the mind of openness. In this way, it's part and parcel of beginner's mind. It's the fresh mind that is open to seeing things a new way, outside of the old, sclerotic, well-worn paths laid out before us. Don't know mind allows for sufficient spaciousness around thought, such to allow the seeing of yet to for unseen solutions. So when we're just doing the same habit pattern dance over and over again, there's no possibility for anything new or fresh. Whereas when we stop and let things kind of come to us, then there are new possibilities. So I think in an interesting way, this quality of don't know mind helps us with exploration and self-development, right? If it's only things you know, then it's nothing new and there's no development. So much of the time in life we don't know what comes next. And this openness of don't know mind helps you step into the mystery of it. Okay. And then here in a minute, I will get into like how we're going to do this practice. And this can be done in lots of ways. And I think of don't know mind as more of like a fruit of the practice rather than a practice itself. But anyway. All right. So good. So what should we watch out for around this teaching around don't know mind and some of these practices? So equanimity, indifference, resignation, and even dissociation can seem similar, but there are important differences that we need to look at. So and largely, I think you can think of don't know mind as like equanimity with thought. So it should be really stressed that equanimity is not indifference or callousness. It is not resignation. It's not like, oh, I can't do anything. Oh, okay, forget it. No, it's not that. Equanimity is the skill of not suffering needlessly by fighting with the way that things are. Equanimity is being at peace with things. And it's not detachment. It's like this smiling impartiality. It's acceptance, but it's engaged. And it's an acceptance that cares instead of an acceptance that doesn't care, that's kind of upset and trying to push things away. Okay. And then I just want to say we don't excuse inaction or indifference with don't know mind. We are engaged with our lives, but just not suffering any more than needed. All right, so I'll get into how I'm going to suggest that we practice here in a minute, but I just figured to open it up to questions or comments about any of that so far. Is that resonating, and is there anything that I can clarify, or are there any personal experiences around this that any of you would like to share?
It's really resonating deeply for me, and a lot of wisdom in everything that you're saying. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, good enough. I'll take it. Sounds good. Okay. Anything else coming up for people? And then, have there been any experiences or insights around this that you want to maybe bring up or, ask about or anything like that? Already? Good enough. Back to the lecture. So, okay, so how are we going to do this? So this is how I'm proposing. So we'll just simply sit in a sense, last week's practice of friendly awareness and inquire into thoughts as they arise. So let's all just go ahead and come up into the meditation. So push the crown of the head up towards the ceiling. And then smile. And then let's find that friendly awareness that we've been working on this past week. And there's this quality of openness, friendliness, acceptance. And now, if any thoughts arise, and they might not, but if any thoughts arise, we can use these inquiries. Is that true? And can I really know that's true? And again, this is subtle, but we're not using this to like dismiss our experience or dissociate from it. So we're not trying to make any of our experience untrue. But what we are trying to do is undermine like the fixity of how we think it's true, like this like hard knowing. So simply we're just trying to take a soft edge to whatever arises. Okay, let's just keep sitting with that for a moment. Thoughts arise, and then we inquire into them. And then the inquiry into them generally makes them disappear. So nothing holds up under scrutiny. And that just watching them disappear, a lot of insight in that. Now to make things a bit more interesting, you can think of something that you find triggering. So just let the thought arise, and you can feel it in the body. You say, is that true? Can I really know that's true? And so this, is that true, or can I really know that's true, can be used basically with any thought. And now here's another inquiry for especially aversive thoughts. So if aversion comes up, where you notice that you're resisting, also applicable to desire. So if there's desire that comes up, something that I've been doing for years is I ask myself, I say the statement, things should be different, like in a kind of questioning way, because that's the underlying assumption. So now think of something that you want to be different. And in a sense, this thing about, oh, things should be different, is just actually being totally honest with yourself, because that's what that thought means. That, we think that things should be different. And if we keep contemplating this desire that things be different, it starts being more and more absurd, which helps us loosen up around craving and aversion. So again, let's bring up something that's triggering for us. And let's try the whole things should be different inquiry. But also, we're not shaming ourselves for our desires. It's perfectly fine to have desires, but we're just kind of just looking at the thoughts and kind of inviting the thoughts to kind of crumble. And then now let's bring up some thoughts and try the whole, can I really know that's true practice? Or is that true? Okay, good. Let's come out of the meditation and just talk about it for a moment before we do it again. So, kind of the way I propose to do this practice is so you just sit there in open, friendly awareness, and then you just have these two tools, right? These two inquiries of, is this true or can I really know it's true? And, oh, think like this bringing into conscious awareness of how you want something to be different. And again, how that's not a problem, but then to really be driven by it is kind of bordering on crazy. And just seeing that over and over again just kind of cements the realization. Okay, how did that go for people? And are there any questions about how we're going to practice?
I loved it. I intentionally invoked um, like recursive, anxious
Uh-huh.
thoughts and beliefs that come up a lot, and um, it was a really nice way to relate to them and to loosen up around them and to feel the reaction to them, and then to kind of
Yeah.
loosen it a bit. So yeah, really good inquiries, and I'm really appreciating all of the different types of inquiry that are good for dealing with different things. So yeah, really loved it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nick. Any other comments or reports? Okay, nice.
To me, this feels like a good way to process news and like online news, like news about events in the world that sometimes can be a little bit triggering or unfortunate. Um, I took a couple things that have been going on the last couple of days, and they just dissolved immediately. So maybe yeah, I've been struggling is a big word, but I've been minimizing the amount of news I consume just so it doesn't disturb my mental state too much, because there's usually nothing I can do with that information anyway. But maybe maybe I can build some kind of tandem session of reading news for a bit and then doing this practice for a bit, just as an experiment. So I'm curious to try that.
Yeah,
So
totally.
thanks.
Totally. In a sense, like I think this practice is all about like understanding. Like I think a lot of Buddhism is about taking this phenomenological lens to your experience. So it's like you just know, okay, this is an experience. And so both of these inquiries, like just keep bringing that into focus. It's like, oh, this is an experience. Here I am believing this is true. Here I am like thinking that things should be different. It's just like, and again, like I just want to super reiterate, we're not trying to like totally tear everything down. What we're trying to do is come back to the middle of like, okay, this is my experience. I do want it to be different. I do want, I do find this disturbing, but then like just let it be like halfway reified, but not entirely. And then we're not trying to totally go beyond it either and totally like destroy it. It's this like middle ground of like, well, I don't really know, but I can kind of be at like this kind of sweet peace with things as they arise and as they disappear.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with what I was sharing earlier around like for most of my practice, always having this lens of wanting to dissolve or wanting to break through or let go of everything as it comes up, but just being at ease and loose and friendly with it is enough. You don't actually have to totally tear it down, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful. Um, Something that Hans was saying, what that brought up for me is like, I always want to help and like do things in the world. And, I always like personalize the news when I'm reading it. And I'm like, what can I do? How can I be better? Should I be protesting in the street? Should I be inside wearing a mask, not talking to anyone so that I don't get sick or get people sick? Like it's always very personal. And then like brings up a lot of feelings and thoughts about how I should be acting, what I should be doing, how I can be doing things differently. Um, am I good enough? Am I doing enough?
Right.
All those things, and just allowing that to be true, not knowing whether I can or should do anything, not having any judgment about myself, is really nice and helpful. And there's one more thing. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me, but I don't know.
Like also, I'm often reminded of that lyric. I don't know what band sings it, but like "Stuck in the Middle with You." It's like we're just like stuck in the middle, and it's like allowing for everything to be all weird and like not resolved. And in a sense, I think that I think I've mentioned this before, but like one way I like to think about the First Noble Truth is like just messy and like stuck in the middle and not clear. And then like, how do we like release into that?
One more question. When you're doing more traditional Vipassana style investigation, do you also bring don't know mind or beginner's mind into that and just kind of let everything be as it is? Or does that go more towards the effort side of actually investigating? Or am I creating a false dichotomy here that does not actually exist?
Right. Okay. Let me just get your question right. So like when you're doing, let's say, normal Vipassana, let's just take noting, like Mahasi style noting. So are you, like how hard or how heavy are you leaning into it versus like how much of this don't know mind are you letting be there? So in a sense, and this is a little bit of like a very easy answer, but I think, you want to have done both. And it's a little bit like it's a little bit like with self-inquiry. It works when you're sitting there yelling at yourself, who am I? Like this, like, it totally works. And you cover a certain ground that's very important that you need to have covered. And then when you're also like sitting there and you're like, well, I would ask the question, but I don't even know what it means. And everything's just open and spacious. And I don't even know what I need to do right now. On the other extreme, you also need to explore that. So what I would actually encourage is that you do both, that you like, let's just say a more like Daniel Ingram, like, oh yeah, arising, this thing, oh, this, like this, all this stuff is happening, and then see that, and then like kind of let it be reified, but then also have the experience of having stepped back and be like, oh my God, all this stuff is kind of happening, but I can't even put my finger on anything. Like I'm confused, and I can settle into this confusion. And in a sense, the other answer is, if you do enough of any kind of these practices, you can't help but be spit out the other side. Like, because you're not going to find anything. There's nothing to find. And so
and then in maturity, you're balancing in the moment between those extremes depending on what is skillful with your current experience. So learning both ends of the spectrum and then constantly balancing between the two.
Yeah, exactly. And like Shinzen Young says, he says, generally just as much is to be learned from bearing down as from easing up. Yep, that's all right.
That's a good quote to remember.
Yeah.
And Nick, nice way of bringing in the title of the course into this session.
Oh yeah, right.